Hey everybody, quick note before this video begins. I made this list of changes and possible sequel improvements to Pokémon Legends Arceus in anticipation of the Pokémon Company announcing a new game, which they did a few hours before I was going to post. Everything on this list is still valid and still applies to Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, but if you hear me referring to a Legends Arceus unannounced sequel, that is why. Anyway, please enjoy the video. Wow, I really like a modern Pokemon game. I did not have that on my 2022 bingo card. Pokémon Legends Arceus has quickly become my favorite Pokémon game since my childhood days playing Pokémon Emerald and not going outside. Look, it's no secret that basically anyone who was a child in the 90s or later loves or has loved Pokémon. I love Pokémon, you probably love Pokémon. Celebrities, yeah, they probably love Pokémon too. Everyone has their favorite Pokémon, trainers, movies, card designs, stuffed animals, cosplay, slow cookers, tattoos, ice cream, and, the games. Those two. Pokémon has touched the heart of basically everyone I know under the age of 35. Unfortunately, this much attention to a series can only lead to one thing: criticism. And boy, do the developers kind of deserve it. The problem is that Pokémon is way more than just the game series many of us played on our Game Boys and DS's. It's a media franchise. Oh yeah, and the one that's made like the most money ever. But either due to greed or overconfidence, Pokémon games and major spin-offs come out so frequently that the cracks are really starting to show. The core games haven't changed much in a long time. And when the games do change, it's usually not very inspiring or for the worse. However, this new one is pretty fun, even if it looks like someone copied a JPEG too many times, and then ported that JPEG to an iPod Nano. Despite looking like mud, Legends Arceus feels in a lot of ways like a really big improvement to the franchise. Bringing the series to a 3D perspective and getting to see various Pokémon wandering a 3D space does wonders for revitalizing that sense of exploration and discovery that I haven't felt with the games for years. With this game focusing more on filling out the Pokédex, players are encouraged to seek out new types of Pokémon in each area they explore, and are rewarded meaningfully for doing so with new items, crafting recipes, and progression in the new star ranking system. Catching Pokémon has also become so much more engaging. You have an entirely new way to catch Pokémon as a trainer, without battling, that comes with all kinds of reimagined mechanics and strategies. I really love this new system, and I also love that it doesn't replace traditional battles, it just provides an alternative that really streamlines encounters, while letting you Dark Souls roll to avoid getting annihilated by a Snorlax. Every time I hit a new area, I spend hours finding as many Pokémon as I can, before continuing with the story. And I love that this game lets me do that without some losers constantly interrupting me to talk about nothing. While I really like this game, I do think that it can be improved in a lot of ways big and small, either through updates or incorporating changes into a sequel. And as someone with no game development experience and a crippling amount of free time, I will now give a widely successful video game developer unsolicited advice on how to improve their game made for children. Here are 100 ways to improve Pokémon Legends Arceus or its sequel in no particular order. First-person mode is an awesome new addition to Pokémon, but you have to hold down the left trigger anytime you want to access it. I think it would be better if you could toggle between views instead. I would like to see more customization options available for your house. Currently, you don't have any reason to visit your home other than to swap out Rotom forms, and that seems like a missed opportunity. Your trainer satchel ruins the look of a lot of outfits. To fix this, they should make it so that you can hide it from view, or at least change how it appears, like all the rest of the clothing options. Now that your trainer character is more involved in actual gameplay, I'd love to be able to upgrade their stats in some way over time. Imagine if you could upgrade how far the trainer can run without getting tired, or the distance they can study a Pokemon from. Feels like a real missed opportunity. I wish there was a way to unlock and listen to the music tracks you hear throughout the game. Some really good tracks only play once or twice, and it would be nice to listen to them again outside of key moments and battles. Maybe this could be done by allowing the player to purchase a music player for their house, or through the Arc phone somehow. Collectibles need better rewards. Finding 107 Spirit Wisps just to catch one Pokemon feels really unfulfilling. Fighting Alpha Pokemon is a legitimately tense and exciting challenge, but it's also something you can almost entirely ignore. There should be more side quests dedicated to fighting or catching Alphas throughout the game. Pokeballs should have a dedicated menu tab that doesn't share space with other throwable items, like smoke bombs and spoiled apricots. Currently, it can be really cumbersome and confusing to find the Pokeball you need on the fly, while you are dodging attacks or trying to quickly catch a Pokemon before it sees you. You should be able to toggle on multiple side quests at once, or you should at least be able to have a side quest and the main quest active at the same time. Sneasler carrying your trainer in a basket is hilarious, but I wish the eye color you chose to have was reflected in the model, instead of it just having black pupils. Look, I know this is a really small detail, but I've got like 90 more suggestions to make, so they can't all be winners. You should be able to sort side quests by area. You should also be able to sort Pokemon pastures. This could be done by type, by species, by level. Anything would be better than nothing, which is what you currently can do. Please don't make a collectible that is only visible at night. But if you are going to do this, don't make the player have to return to camp in order to change the time of day. It's tedious. I think it would be cool if stars earned from completing the Pokédex awarded players with new clothing options. Something to show off your skills as you progress further into the game. Maybe this could lead to collecting pieces of a Senior Survey Corps uniform. Add more multiplayer strand mechanics. Strand games, somehow, are the future. Provide a skin tone slider for trainer creation. There are more than 4 skin tones in the world. Catching Pokemon in water doesn't really work well in this game. Water Pokemon are very hard to see, and should be highlighted better. I was delighted when I found out that you can throw berries into the water in Legends Arceus, and attract certain fish Pokemon. This mechanic should be expanded upon to include craftable bait. Adding a water-themed Pokeball could also help make catching water Pokemon more fun. Maybe a Pokeball that skips across the water. Add a fishing mechanic. Pokemon's already done it in the past, and now Kirby's fishing, and Pokemon trainers aren't? What's up with that? One last thing on the water topic, and I'll switch to something else. I think a Legends sequel could really expand water environments further. Imagine using a new mount to explore underwater areas. This could be great in something like a Return to the Hoenn region. Have more fun with the dimension hopping characters. I appreciate that Game Freak used this game to develop a deep cut character like Ingo, but I want to fight a really confused Red on a random cliffside who doesn't know why he's here. It's already a wacky story, so go nuts with it. I think the game could do with more interesting legendary Pokemon hunting quests. The in-game quests in this game for getting Pokemon like Heatran and Regigigas were pretty boring. But I thought Cresselia's mechanic of reversing your controls during battle was neat. I noticed while playing that the player gets sucked into a lot of battles with trainers during specific story scenes without much warning, and it would be nice if you were given the option to pick your starting Pokemon when this happens. Some of these battles you can back out of, but others you can't. I don't know if co-op is ever really going to be in the cards for a Pokemon game like this, but it really should be. Other games manage it, and even Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee had something. I think Pokemon needs some sort of one-on-one Pokemon battle mode. Most trainer battles are made way too easy because you have a full team to fight against your opponent's 2 or 3 Pokemon. That doesn't seem fair, and it's certainly not very challenging. If certain battles allowed you to only use one Pokemon, it could make for some interesting encounters. The developers could maybe make this samurai duel themed to keep up with the feudal setting. I've already mentioned how I think that not being able to customize your house is a missed opportunity. Well, I think the same is true for your campsites. Imagine being able to improve campsites in different regions over time through side quests as you progress further into the game. The player could be rewarded for doing so with free items or tips about where to find rare Pokemon. Game Freak, please, it's time. Let players make multiple save files, just like any other game. You should be able to customize the mount Pokemon in some way. Imagine dressing your Weirdeer in a cool outfit, or being able to unlock a shiny version of your mount by completing a unique challenge. Adding voice acting for major characters feels almost like a necessity at this point. There are so many scenes of characters talking that really feel awkward because of its absence. This game has a better difficulty curve than most Pokemon games, in my opinion. The game actually gets fairly hard if you try and sprint through it, and you have to strategize a bit here and there. But I still wish Game Freak would include some kind of hard mode difficulty option, like in Gen 5. More options for players are always better. While we are talking about features from other Pokemon games, let's run through a few more. I think bringing back seasons into the game could be interesting and add some life into the admittedly sparse world. I don't know, let's see some leaves changing color. Maybe we could include a different version of certain Pokemon, or make them spawn more often. Adding these little changes would just make the world feel a bit more alive. Bring back Pokeball seals. Adding special effects to your Pokeball is a fun mechanic and something players can use to personalize their experience further. I would love to see the trainer area expanded further, with more trainers added to the mix who use interesting teams based on other games and trainers. Sort of like a primitive Battle Frontier. Add double battles into the game. Double battles change the dynamic of trainer battles in a lot of interesting ways, and the game already has the ability to let you fight multiple Pokemon at once. Add the ability to participate with other players in raid battles. This was a really interesting feature in Sword and Shield, and it would fit nicely with Legends' already existing Pokemon Lords and Alpha Pokemon battles. It would be nice if you could keep one of your Pokemon with you outside of the Pokeball at all times as a companion. It's cute that you can throw out your Pokemon team, but I wish they could actually move around more. I think Pokemon research tasks are a really fun side objective in Legends Arceus, and they change how you interact with certain Pokemon. I would love to see this concept evolved further, with a larger variety of tasks, and more tasks related to a specific Pokemon. For example, they could add a task for defeating a Pokemon with its natural rival. Speaking of rivals, I wish your rival in this game was more interesting. I think it's a great concept to include a Pokemon rival who is new to catching Pokemon, but I would have liked to have seen them be a little more involved in the story and have a little more personality. Giving them a Pikachu was a neat choice though. I wish wild Pokemon would behave more interestingly when not interacting with the player character. They kind of just stand around or walk in circles, which makes them feel more like items to pick up instead of creatures existing in a world. I wish evolutionary items were more interesting to unlock. Completing the Pokédex is a really big deal in this game, but the items needed to do so feel like they were added as an afterthought. There should be more NPCs wandering around the open world. I don't want to run into them every few feet, but there are big areas in this game that unfortunately feel very empty in more ways than one. The game could be improved by throwing in some more bandits, or interesting factions outside of the Diamond and Pearl clan members, and the occasional village quest giver. It feels like this game's developers wanted to make the tutorial skippable, but decided at the last minute not to. Boy, do I wish they had. I wish there were more ways to invest your money into Jubilife City. Helping to improve the local town shops is really satisfying, and I wish more quests and upgrade paths existed that would help take these concepts further. It would be nice to see factions in these games mean more. There really isn't an option to side with one NPC clan over another, and that's too bad because there are some wardens who I would love to go to war against. It would also be cool to build loyalty with Pearl Clan and Diamond Clan members and earn rewards for doing so. They both have their own settlements in the game, but there's nothing interesting to do with them. You have one choice to make in basically the entire game, and it's ultimately underwhelming. What is the point of adding dialogue options if they don't mean anything and only lead to very minor changes when interacting with other characters? I'm not asking for them to add a lot, but it would be neat to add some role-playing into this RPG. I think the inclusion of items that attract specific Pokemon types is a neat idea, but they don't really feel necessary when an Oron Berry works for most Pokemon. This mechanic needs to be balanced better. Players should have a way to increase the chances of a space-time distortion occurring using an in-game item. This is especially true because certain Pokemon can only be caught in these rifts. I'm going to go ahead and call this the I want my favorite Pokemon in the game spot on the list. It's a choose your own critique. Post in the comments down below what Pokemon you wish had shown up in Legends Arceus, or that you would like to see added in its sequel or DLC. Don't tell anyone, but my vote is for Mudkip. There should be more ways to make money in Pokemon Legends Arceus. Maybe through the return of a popular minigame? Just let me dream. There should be more minigames in general. Balloon races were a really nice detour when playing. Alright, look, I'm not against grinding in video games, but the amount of money that it takes to upgrade your satchel in this game is outrageous! I also believe upgrading your satchel would be less annoying if you were able to purchase multiple new satchel spots at once, instead of having to initiate the same conversation over and over again. You should be able to catch flying Pokemon while riding on Braviary's back. You should also be able to battle flying Pokemon in the air while on Braviary's back. For non-flying types, this could be done by tying little balloons to the back of your Pokemon. I'm not joking. The water battles already have those cute little rafts, even though they look kinda terrible, so what's so crazy about lifting up my Dialga using latex and helium? You should be able to collect items using your Pokemon while on the back of Weirdeer. Not being able to is only a minor gripe, but I mean, come on. I want to pick up that Tumblestone. Discovering the ability to build a farm and grow crops in Jubilife City using Pokemon was an amazing experience. I would like to see this mechanic expanded further. You should be able to improve crop yields more than you already can with additional Pokemon collection quests. You should also be able to plant multiple kinds of crops at once. You should also be able to bring in your own seeds and berries for planting. I can imagine searching for rare seeds and berries would make for an interesting side task to work on while exploring the open world and collecting Pokemon. The quest to find Shaman should not require having save data from Pokemon Sword and Shield, because it's too cool to leave out for some players. Okay, listen. I didn't want to include a category in this list where every item was just, I wish the game was prettier, or I wish the game had better graphics. Make it that way. But I will make a similar critique relating to the game's performance. I think Pokemon should be visible or loaded in from further away. It's really difficult to spot Pokemon from the air unless you are flying very low. And when you are riding on Weirdeer, Pokemon often don't spawn into the game until you are right on top of them. This actively makes the game less enjoyable to play, and I'd love to see this aspect of the game tightened up. It would be nice if some of the outfits in the game had unique effects. What if the ninja suits made you better at sneaking up on Pokemon? Just a thought. Listen, this point has been made by a lot of people already, but the caves in this game are just awful. They're super empty, really boring, and what is that white outline that's around your character anytime you're underground? I hate it. Okay, here's a big one for you. You should be able to travel between the various open world areas in the game without having to travel back to Jubilife City every single time. This would allow players to avoid an unnecessary extra loading screen that at this point feels like it's taken years off my life. It would be neat if the game included an extra reward for defeating Pokemon Lords without battling them with your team. I'm talking about only using Balms. If you haven't tried this already, I recommend it. It adds a really interesting extra bit of challenge. I wish the flute tune that plays when you call a mount was different across each mount. It's weird that the same tune calls different Pokemon, and let's be honest, that tune gets really repetitive. The game should make shiny hunting mechanics a little bit more clear. I had no idea completing research tasks was going to be so important. The noise that indicates a shiny Pokemon is nearby should be louder. Speaking of shinies, here's where I would show that in action, if I had a shiny. Full controller button mapping should always be an option in every video game ever. Let's build video games that anyone can play. This game could do with a proper photo mode. The ability to turn off your heads-up display in settings is nice, but other games provide many more options for taking cool pics. Does anyone else think it's kind of weird that this game had just one puzzle? And it was placed right at the end of the final area? It would be nice if you could explore inside the pastures and interact with some of your caught Pokemon while they are stored there. Seeing them across the fence is a nice touch, but it's also a bit sad in a really weird kind of way. Alright, there's not a nicer way to say this, and it might come down to personal preference, but I just don't like the professor in this game. I wish he was more interesting and more involved in the story. Captain Silene shows up way less often, and is far more interesting. Okay, this is a bit of a spoiler, but the time travel plot in this game is never really resolved. That seems like a really big loose thread to kind of just leave dangling, but maybe they'll acknowledge that in DLC. Who knows? Okay, confession time. This isn't a list of 100 improvements that can be made to Pokémon Legends Arceus.
They played us like a damn fiddle!
That's 2 references to Metal Gear Solid 5 in this video about pocket monsters. I don't really know why either. Anyway, this is a video of about 75 improvements. I'm going to do something a little different with the remaining 25 entries on this list. You see, I actually really like Pokémon Legends Arceus a lot. Yeah, you probably could have guessed that based on my 4-minute intro into this video. I like it so much that I've actually run out of complaints and thinly veiled Breath of the Wild comparisons. Generally, I try to talk about only things I like on this channel, and Pokémon Legends Arceus is no different. I really do feel like this is the best Pokemon's been in years, and I'm kinda terrified this good thing we've got going might get ruined in a sequel, or even worse, it's forgotten about entirely, like some other spin-off titles. So, with that in mind, numbers 76 through 100 are changes I don't want to be made to Arceus or its sequel, but fear can and will happen. Welcome to treating Game Freak like an abusive relationship, because you can't accept that these games aren't made for you anymore, but you don't want to learn how to play Shin Megami Tensei. Yeah, I really don't. Game Freak should continue to keep story elements light or optional. I love that this game puts more of an emphasis on letting the player explore for themselves, and allows players to return to the story at their own leisure. This new way of doing things should be protected at all costs. Legends Arceus did a good job including a lot of interesting environments. I hope this trend continues and we see some cool deserts, or jungles, or other biomes. The link cable is a great new item for solo players. This should be in every new game moving forward. Jubilife City growing and changing as you progress through the game and complete side quests is amazing. I've never enjoyed a Pokemon City this much. I hope whatever sequel happens has an equally great hub area. Please, for the love of God, keep EV and IV stats out of Pokemon. They are needlessly complicated and suck any fun out of training a team. Don't add a minimap or anything else that would overcluster the HUD. It's pretty well balanced right now, and I'd hate to see it get too busy. Legends Arceus doesn't let you skip the tutorial portion of the game, but it does keep it relatively brief compared to some of the other mainstay Pokemon games. I hope this trend continues. The sizes of Pokemon you catch in this game are goofy, and I love it. Please don't change this moving forward to accommodate more indoor areas or for some other reason. I don't want to see a Charizard anywhere near this game. That's not a slight on Charizard specifically, but at Game Freak's tendency to push the original 151 way too much. Legends Arceus did a decent job keeping the balance of new and old Pokemon in its roster, and I hope this continues. I want the chance to learn to love Pokemon from generations I don't know as well, and that can't happen if you're only playing with Charizards, Blastoises, and Venusaurs. Obviously, I think the switch to an over-the-shoulder perspective is pretty amazing and immersive. I can't imagine Pokemon will trend away from this, but Game Freak makes weird decisions often, so I figured I'd get this on the record. While they aren't perfect, I think agile and strong style moves are an interesting new mechanic worth fine-tuning. I hope they don't disappear like other generation gimmicks. There are several quality of life improvements to the battle UI that I want to see remain in Pokemon going forward. Let's start with this. I love that the turn order is always displayed during battle. This keeps me from having to memorize every Pokemon's speed stats, which I am way too dumb to do. And the new super effective and not very effective symbols add a lot here. I love that all of your Pokemon team's moves are listed in an easy-to-read screen during battle. The battle UI is so good in this game that it also reduces the need for the amount of messages you receive while fighting. You don't have to be told every turn what the weather is doing to a battle. You can read that right here on the additional information screen. Overall, I was very impressed with the move animations in Legends Arceus. Some of the late game moves are just amazing to watch, and I like that you can move around freely to see different angles during fights. Moving on from the battles, let's talk about catching Pokemon. I love that this game combines Safari Zone item mechanics and new and unique Pokeball throwing methods. Catching Pokemon outside of the traditional battles is really rewarding, and it's just challenging enough to not feel too easy or too boring. I hope this balance can continue going forward. Setting this game in the distant past was an inspired choice. It's really interesting to see a Pokemon game that explores a setting and cast that treats Pokemon differently than ever before. I hope whatever comes next can keep the spirit of this idea alive. We've had many games set in the modern day. I would be happy to return to the past once more for a sequel. I think Pokémon Legends Arceus handles mount Pokemon better than any game in the series. Mounts in this game feed into that addictive Metroid method of game design, where new areas are completely recontextualized as you gain new ways to traverse them. This experience feels so much better than searching around for HMs. The Lord battles in Pokémon Legends Arceus are all winners in my book. I hope this weird detour into Dark Souls boss fights sticks around. I've already said this somewhere else in the list, but Pokemon research tasks are a great new feature. I like that this game uses the full range of Pokemon levels. Being able to fight Pokemon approaching or surpassing level 80 is a really cool feeling, and it helps keep the post-game interesting. The fact that it is easy to shiny hunt in this game, if you put the appropriate amount of work in, is a really good thing. New Pokemon forms continue to be the best thing to ever come out of Pokemon Sun and Moon. Legends Arceus also did a good job picking interesting and unexpected Pokemon to revisit with this trend. I prefer to see new Pokemon like this, instead of like, I don't know, a new Pikachu. This game has so many clothing options. I'm too embarrassed to admit how much time I spent dressing my trainer, but it was a lot of time. Alpha Pokemon. I want them to be kept in because they lead to so many unexpected and exciting encounters while playing. Well, that's it. 100 improvements and recommendations for Pokémon Legends Arceus. We'll hopefully see very soon how many of these pan out. A lot of Pokemon news is supposed to drop in the next few weeks, and I cannot believe that I can't wait for that. If you've made it through this entire video, I want to thank you so much for doing so. I didn't expect to love a Pokemon game this much ever again in my lifetime, so I appreciate you taking the time to hear way too many of my thoughts about it, and I'd love to read your own in the comments down below. Also, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to this channel. Videos like these take a lot of time, and your support and feedback is greatly appreciated. Until next time, take care. Thanks for watching.